a brief overview of Zoom just so that everyone can engage as best as possible. I'm going to hit record, and then Sarah,
I'm already
you can take it away.
Okay. Hi, welcome to this Zoom meeting. Here are some instructions on how to operate as a meeting attendee in Zoom. Your host has the ability to mute and unmute you. Most likely, you've been muted when you entered the meeting room. Here's where you can mute and unmute yourself. If you slide your cursor to the bottom left hand, you'll see the microphone. When there's a slash over it, that means you're muted. Click it again to unmute yourself. You may also notice that you have a video option. Here's where you can turn that on and off. Again, down next to the mute button, the little video camera. Go ahead and click it. When there's a line through it, that means your video is off. Click it again to stop to turn the video back on. If you don't have a photo associated with your Zoom account, it will just say your name in the absence of your video feed. To see who else is in the meeting, you can click on the participant list down the bottom. This is also where you can rename yourself. So if you hover over your name under More, click Rename. In larger meetings, in order to keep the chatter and confusion down, it's easiest to use the chat function. Here you can type messages to the whole group or privately to specific people. Move your cursor down to the bottom, the little chat bubble. So I can either send a message to the whole group, or if I just want to message the host or any other participant privately, I can do that as well. Additionally, another function that helps keep people from talking over each other is the raise hand function. This notifies the host that you have something to share. The host will call on you when it is your turn to share. That raise hand is at the bottom of the participant list. You go ahead and click raise hand and you can see how a hand comes up next to my name. I then click it to lower my hand. Thanks for listening and enjoy your virtual meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah.
I
see some
video star.
What? Yeah, I see some peer-to-peer help engagement going on there. So, Chris, thank you for trying to help. I think it's Scott regarding some audio. But if you're not hearing us, check your audio settings next to the microphone icon in the lower left. Okay, I'm going to share my screen so that we can get the agenda up. Okay, can I get a thumbs up? Can folks see my screen? Okay, great, Sarah. Thank you. Well, this is the third BDCC Business Resiliency Session webinar, and we appreciate everyone's engagement. I was reflecting this morning on the fact that this was our third and trying to think about the first one, and it made me realize the first one, I'll speak for myself. It felt like I was slightly concussed. The Monday prior to that, we were just in reaction mode, and we're still somewhat in reaction mode. We were just trying to get our arms around the situation. The next week leading up to week 2, it was in anticipation of what the CARES Act was going to be. And then 40 minutes, I would say, before this session, the CARES Act was passed by the House. And it was really, for me, a moment of cautious optimism, because the what was starting to formulate. And I knew right after the end of that session, we would be transitioning to the how. So in some ways, this agenda came together, I would say, quickly. I'm excited that, I'm not sure Michael Harrington is on, but we'll look for him. in this session. We'll get some updates from Michael, the federal delegation, the Wyndham delegation, and then Susan Mazza from the SBA. And I think most of the questions that we've been receiving this week is around the payroll protection plan program. So we'll probably dig into those questions a lot. But again, welcome. It's time to shift to the how, and I'm going to now pass it over to Adam Grenold, BDCC's executive director, for some remarks as well. I think I'll stop sharing. Yeah, there we go.
Go ahead,
All
Adam.
right, Adam.
Thanks, RT. Good afternoon. I'm sorry. Sarah, what?
Go ahead.
Oh,
You're
Go
good.
ahead.
okay.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. Before we get into this very sort of action-based presentation, we wanted to pause for a moment and just acknowledge the difficulties that have been faced with these last 3 weeks, are faced with today, and will continue to be faced with. It's critical that we all have the right information, that we understand our own unique situations as business owners, and with that information, we're able to make decisions. So it's with that we also want to reflect that sometimes the decision is not to pursue a solution necessarily. It's the courage to close. And that is a very, very difficult decision. In economic development, we really sort of get up every day to see how many jobs we can help employers create, and how many new employers we can bring to fruition. And in startup and acceleration industry, fail fast is a term that's embraced in that context, because entrepreneurs want to get through that. They want to see if it's going to work. If it's not, they want to fail fast. In the context of what we're faced now, I think generally failing is still a bad word. So as an organization, we're really going to start looking for ways to help our friends, help our neighbors understand to have the courage that it's okay to close, and to be able to get those folks resilient, ready for their next move, their next entrepreneurial effort in the months ahead. With that said, we're still going to get up every day to try to bring you, the listeners here and anyone else, federal resources, information that will allow you to continue to stay in business and be ready for that next step when we get on the other side of this. So with that, we're going to be hearing some real details today, actionable items, just cautioning everyone to make sure you get that information, know your position, have patience, but when the time is right, be ready to move. Back to you, Sarah.
Great, thanks, Adam. Looks like we have some updates from our federal delegation staffers. I believe Erica Campbell is here from Bernie Sanders' office. Erica, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Thank you, Sarah. Hey, everyone. How's it going? So I see that Susan Mazza is on the phone, so I'm not going to get too into the nitty-gritty of PPP because I assume that Susan, you can do that. Sarah, do you think it would be helpful if I just quickly summarize the programs, or do you think most people know and it's just more like, let's get into more questions? I'm happy to
just high level overview would be great.
Okay, great. So the CARES Act that passed on March 27th had a variety of programs. They have been rolling out fairly slowly. We are getting closer, but there's still a lot of challenges. The big thing that obviously this week is the Paycheck Protection Program. Those are the loans up to $10 million, and they cover that 8 weeks of payroll. They are for companies 500 and fewer. And as far as we know, there is no income cap on that. We have, that was not very clear, but we have verified that. So this program you will be going through a lender, and it has to be an approved lender. There's some lenders that are sort of starting to line up, and there's quite a good list already that SBA has, and then there are more that have been interested. We have been hearing from the lending community that there are some, some challenges that they're seeing around various components of this. The verification process, if they want to move money quickly, is going to be challenging to have to spend the time to verify everything. And so the concern that we have is that lenders may prioritize existing customers, and that may leave some, potentially leave some business out. So it's just I wanted to let you know that the delegation is concerned about that. Senator Sanders' office is concerned about that, and we want to make sure that this PPP program is accessible to all Vermont small businesses on an equal playing field. So if anybody has any questions, I know that Susan's going to go over the details more, so I think I'll leave it at that. Just a quick update on the EIDL program and the subsequent emergency grant program is that application is already open. It seems like I've heard varying. Just a quick overview. That's the grant up to $2 million with the $10,000 sort of advance, aka grant. It's slightly unclear. I would love, if anybody's applied successfully, I would love to hear your experience with it. We have been hearing some folks that have been applying. They're not necessarily getting, some are just sort of moving right through the system, it seems, and then others are having some troubles, like they haven't heard back. Or we also have been, farms are not able to apply, small farms, to this, and they are the PPP. And we, as a delegation, are pushing really hard on that. We did send a letter to SBA yesterday, the federal SBA, and hoping that there's an opportunity here. If you're the value-added aspect of a farm could apply, but the farm itself is not eligible. I think I'll stop there. I also have a lot of information on unemployment for self-employed, if people are interested in hearing a little bit about that. There's the paid sick time from the other act, the Families First, that are the tax credits, if anybody's interested in hearing about that. Yeah, I think that kind of covers the bulk of it and where we're at the moment.
Okay.
So much information that's changing. It's great you're doing these on a weekly basis, for sure. So
Okay,
thank you,
great.
and I'm happy to take questions later.
Okay, great. Thank you, Erica. Yeah, there's some questions coming in. Some are specific to the PPP. I think those will be best saved and served for when Susan chats with us. So we'll keep an eye on those.
RT, there are some questions about unemployment for self-employed people.
Okay. Erica, I don't know, can you see the one from Ken?
I would like info about unemployment for self-employed.
I think she needs to be unmuted.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Hold on.
Sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Sarah, I have managed to get myself on a screen view with all the different people's faces, but I can't see the. Oh yeah, I just have to click the chat. Right. Okay. Sorry.
Yep.
You'd think I would know this by now. Okay. So yeah. So for self-employed individuals, sole proprietors, contractors, freelancers, etc. So there is the pandemic unemployment. You are eligible, and like every other person of getting unemployment, you will get the $600 extra per week. The Vermont Department of Labor has been working very hard at making sure that they can move then they can take in the applications and move this money. I just saw on the DOL site today that they are actually allowing intake now from sole proprietors, self-employed folks. So before there was like, you can like sign up for updates, but I just saw today that there is a brand new link that says, put your information in it. They may not get to it right away, but at least you know you have that information in there. So is there anything more specific to that question? Oh, the part-time, yes, I know that, I know, yeah. So for part-time, okay, so this is sort of the interplay between unemployment and PPP. So for part-time employees, the state has, and if anybody is on the state DOL, please pipe up right now, or anybody else like representatives. But there is the part-time, and I'm gonna butcher the name and I don't have it in front of me, but there's like the part-time, if I have it here anywhere, sorry. It's I think they say STE or something. It's for part-time workers, and we did find out, we verified this in the legislation, that if you are part-time, like very part-time, and you might only be eligible for a very, very tiny bit of unemployment, you will still get the full $600 per week. And I think that's a nice opportunity for companies to be able to have their workers, to be able to lay their workers off, like cut their workers' hours, have them still be able to get that pandemic unemployment payment, and then also be able to retain that worker, so you don't have to fully lay them off, which is going to be nice when, if you're applying for the PPP, you don't know, how quickly that will move, when that money will get in. So you are allowed to lay workers off and rehire them for the PPP, but having that connection still might be a better option for somebody.
Hey, Sarah, I just wanted to recognize Representative Tolino's on the call and may be able to address some of the state issues on this.
Right.
So thank you, Adam. I don't have total mastery of the details of that, but I apologize. But I'm happy to double check and see. There's been obviously efforts from the Vermont legislature to address RUI rules so that we could be more flexible and adaptable to the context that we're in right now, and also the scale of change that's hit the Department of Labor so fast. I think the interim commissioner said on Wednesday in testimony that they'd done a year's worth of claims processing in the last couple of weeks in terms of what they're dealing with. And so right now we're just mostly trying to sort of keep track of what emergent issues there are. And this particular piece is not one that I'd been asked for communication on yet on part-time workers. And so I don't have mastery of it, but I will definitely follow up and share what I learned.
Thank you. And then just as a note, we are still anticipating Commissioner Harrington to join us. So maybe we can hold off on unemployment questions for the time being and address those once he comes on.
Great. And Adam, is he going to, well, I guess we'll see him pop in, but maybe he'll communicate directly with you when he's in. Okay, great. So Pat Fowler from the bookstore in Bellows Falls made a nice suggestion. So if you hover over your picture and then there's the three dots, you can choose to rename yourself. You might want to stick with your original given name, but then you can add your affiliation. So I just did it for me and added BDCC, so it can help with context. So great suggestion, Pat. Thank you. Yeah, I think we're. Is there any other federal delegation member. Just scrolling through. Sarah, do you see anyone?
Nope.
Okay. And other Wyndham delegation folk. Do we see any?
Please use the raise hand button if there are some Wyndham delegation other than Representative Tolino, unless Representative Tolino, you wanted to speak some more.
Yeah, I won't speak for very long, but I did want to just say that one of the things that we discussed in our committee time this week was we had a representative from the banking industry trying to understand their timetable for rolling out. And as you might imagine, there's a lot of complexity for the banks to figure out in very short order, and they were waiting an update from Treasury as of Wednesday afternoon that they hoped would allow them to be ready for today's beginning point. And they know that they're required under the law to be able to start accepting applications for the funds, but many of the rules were still emerging as of Wednesday, or the guidance for what that meant as of Wednesday. But it sounded, at least at the outset, like they're doing everything that they can to be ready to meet this moment for the business community and business community needs around accessing those resources. And one of the crucial tools that I have and other legislators have to try to be helpful is to get feedback as people start to plug into that system to make sure that we're communicating through state channels and then obviously the federal delegation as well. So if you do start to hear things of people who have lived experience where things aren't matching up with expectation or confusion, please do let me know or let any of your other reps know, and we'll try to keep track of those questions and make sure that we're addressing them in our oversight responsibility.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
RT, there was a question that came in. Says, I represent a nonprofit fraternal organization. If we lay off our full and part-time employees, how are we impacted as far as taxes and anything else that would adversely affect our business record?
Yeah, I think this came up last week, and Representative Kornheiser addressed this. I might not get the terminology right, but the business search that's associated with an employer and their employment record, employer record, will not be effective. Will not be affected. Can someone confirm that that is correct?
That's true, RT. And again, I did just get confirmation from Commissioner Harrington. He will be joining. So maybe we can just hold on all unemployment questions until he joins.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And that I can just say that is true. That was in the package that the House passed and the governor signed on Monday.
Ted has asked, is a non-501c3 nonprofit eligible? There is a listing of what 501cs are eligible. Maybe if you could be more specific, we can ask Susan when she speaks. I think then it might be appropriate, and if Susan is ready, it might be appropriate to go to Susan Mazza of the Small Business Association to start that discussion around the PPP. And then Susan, if you wouldn't mind being a little bit flexible, if Michael Harrington joins, I'm not sure what his availability is, so we might have to just shift things around a little bit, and that'd be greatly appreciated. I know everyone's time is so limited, so we're just trying to be flexible. So Susan, are you available?
I am. Yeah, I'm Susan Mazzo. Our district office is in the Montpelier office, the Small Business Administration. So the EIDL and the PPP and a lot of these things that are coming through are right in our wheelhouse, if you want to call it that, but they are programs that are also being done with Treasury. Don't know the people, if everybody has a really good idea of generally where we're at with those, so I'm just going to highlight really briefly. The economic injury disaster loan is available, can be applying. We've been taking applications for a couple of weeks. The complication factor with that particular program is that program has existed for many years within the context of our physical disasters. So it had one form that was used continually. With this coronavirus, they had to make adjustments to it, and they've been continuing to make adjustments to it as the land has kind of been shifting under our feet. Very briefly, at the beginning of once the declaration was allowed by the SBA for Vermont, we were able to start taking applications. The system, in all honesty, could not handle the volume that was coming through across the country. So the system was consistently crashing and really presenting a lot of problems with anybody either getting into it, getting through it, getting kicked out, things of that nature. So that was changed about a week in. They downloaded that and they changed the whole protocol for uploading information. So it got quicker and easier, but it was still a little bit different. And then they brought it down again. And then this week, as of Monday, the current application process is in place. The additional bandwidth that the SBA was able to do is bring in a lot more meat in terms of partnering with a Rocket Mortgage. So the ability of that system to help process these is really cranking up our ability to handle it. We've also loaded a ton more of call centers because the people couldn't get through to our call centers. They were on wait for hours at a time. That is not happening now. So I'm happy to say that right now the system, I haven't heard of really anybody having a problem with it. It's the kind of thing where you pull up the application. It's almost like a TurboTax, very, very simple, much simpler than for those who had been trying to apply before under the other scenarios. And what it'll do is after you input it, takes no longer than 2 hours. I know people who've only taken 15 minutes. I've been talking to them on the phone and they did it and they said, well, that was easy, and they applied. So it's all across the board. Who knew government could work that fast? But what's interesting is it'll come back and it'll show you, you want to make sure you don't want to make any changes. Is this what you want? You submit it, you get an application number back. Now, the one thing that I will say is that I know people who are going through that process. That seems to be working smoothly. The issue we have is with people who applied before this new application. We are asking them to reapply. We are being told they will not lose their place in the queue. That's what we're being told. But the key is that the new application includes the ability to ask for that advance. The other processes did not. And because EIDL was created and was in place before the act was passed, that hadn't been encapsulated with all of this. So again, it's very simple. So we're trying to get back to people. We were told robocall and emails were going out to prior applicants who had already submitted. I know in some cases people have said they haven't gotten anything, and I've said, don't worry, it doesn't take long. Just do it this way. The one little point of contention sometimes you might get is that part of that application process means if they're interested in that grant or advance, they have to provide bank and routing information. So sometimes we've gotten some calls, some concerned individuals like, what do you mean? I'm always so worried about adding in information like that. That is a part of our process. They can also then go to our 800 number, which is working very quickly, and they have it set up so that you can, option one is finding out the status. And if you have that application number, it should be able to help you work through that process. We have been told, just as written in the act, that the funds that up to $10,000 that has been talked about, some people call it a grant, we are calling it an advance, should happen very quickly and may very well happen a good deal before the loan application is actually approved. The intent is to get that money out fast. When it comes to that, I do need to share something we found out, because my office has been concerned with, what does up to mean? What does that mean? And we're still a little unclear as to whether it's a grant or a loan advance. It truly is an advance, but in many cases you won't have to pay it back. We have a little bit more clarity there. It appears that the dollar amount is driven by your number of employees as well. So if you have, I believe, 5, 6 employees, I believe they're calculating it based on $1,000 on employee, which also means that if you have some really small businesses who do not have a lot of employees, they're not going to get that $10,000. Our concern is that rumor had it out in the community that it was good money, it's coming, and our indication is that that will not be necessarily the full 10,000. The advance that they're talking about, if the loan is being used for payroll cost purposes, will be taken into consideration if somebody then goes to the PPP to apply. But so that's kind of the status of EIDL right now. We refer to it as EIDL. But that loan, the EIDL is still able, you can get up to $2 million. The general calculation they're putting forward to come up with a loan amount is revenues less cost of goods gives you your gross profit. You divide that by 2. And they're basically giving people about 6 months worth of that. That is how they are deriving that number. The way you can use those funds, I can see some people like frowning, like, what does that mean and what's that going to look like? And it's a little bit, so when people who are not like manufacturers start thinking about that, it takes them a little bit of time to go through that. But you may be pleased to see that it generally is supposed to cover about half of a year's worth of your basic operating expenses. The use of the funds can be used to make payments on existing term debt. It can be used for payroll. It can be used for utilities, salaries, and all of these things. It's a pretty broad general program, and there won't be any thing like the PPP has some pretty tight, very tight restrictions in terms of payroll, but the EIDL does not. So that is a pretty broad based program. Anything up to 25,000, there is no collateral, and any loans up to 200,000 do not have to be personally guaranteed. They do look for collateral after you hit that $25,000 mark, but if there isn't enough, we'll take subordinate positions. If there isn't enough, we will be approving the loan anyway. So it is able to go all the way up to 2 million, but then again, it's based on that basic underwriting guideline. Just a little patience for the SBA, because that program has been changing as it is in effect. It has led for a little bit of a confusion at the beginning, but I'm thinking now that it's pretty much smooth sailing in terms of people getting access to it, applying to it, and moving forward. The PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, is another thing altogether. We knew it was coming. We had a lot of theoretical summaries out of the Senate, out of Congress, and that was helpful. And we saw the intention of the wording section by section, but we in the agency also realized it's not until my agency and Treasury had to create the vehicle that would make this happen and try and make sense out of it. We were waiting for that kind of guidance, because we're very familiar with the fact that it's not until it actually gets crafted and they figure out how they can do this that some of those little distinctions and those little variations and twists can come into play. So you are right that the information we were hoping on getting out earlier, we were hoping to get it out by the end of the week. Well, I guess we did. It landed in our inbox about 6:30 last night. So the lenders did not have information to go on up until last night. And some of it is still very unclear. But I will tell you, some of the applications are going through. They are coming through for Vermont. I will also tell you that the computer system and how that's working seems to be a little problematic right now. Not surprising.
Susan, I'm sorry, this is
Yeah,
RT, just to
sure,
jump in.
sure.
Are you talking about the PPP
Yes,
applications are going
right.
through? Yeah, so one of my
Yeah.
questions is how and where can people apply for
Okay,
that program specifically?
absolutely. Um, any existing SBA lender that had any kind of delegated authority in SBA, which would be express and preferred, would be called the delegated authorities. And I'll tell you that any lender that we had, there was only one or two that didn't have one of those authorities. So vast majority of the lenders in the state that have ever done anything with SBA, anyone with a delegated authority, the headquarters actually inserted the PPP and made them eligible to participate if they wanted to. It's been a little glitch there. This is the first day. It looks like some ended up not getting there, or getting it and getting reduced. So what
Okay.
I'll say is, your in your market area, Brattleboro Savings and Loan, of course, the People's United, we have Heritage, we have a number of the credit unions, we have all the local community banks, Bank of Bennington. I know that many of them have it. Many of them have been indicating a real interest in getting going. I would tell you also, though, that because they just got the information, it may be a little bit of a slow start today. But I have gone in to see, and there are applications coming through from the various banks. Doesn't mean they're all getting approved or anything like that. I have also heard that some people are putting in applications where the person goes to the bank, the business goes to the bank. There is a business person's application to fill out, and that was recently changed. There was one version that was put out on our website and on the Treasury site for guidance a couple of days ago, and then a new one came out this morning. So it's a slightly different form, only slightly, for a borrower to be able to fill out and be able to work with their lender. They don't have to provide a ton of information. They don't have to go through bells and whistles, but they do have to bring that application in. They do have to be able to verify all of the payroll information that they're going to be needing to have. And especially if they have a relationship with a bank already, that banker is going to be pretty comfortable with already knowing the lay of the land with that business.
Susan, I'm
Go
gonna
ahead.
jump in here again. Thank you.
Sure.
I am seeing a lot of questions coming into and through the chat, and
Okay.
with 91 people in the session, we typically try to get to these questions, but
Okay.
I'm not. I'm making an open statement. I don't think we're going to be able to get to all the questions that are posted, but we are going to
Okay.
endeavor to address them. We know who's been asking them. We can save the chat, and we will endeavor to either do direct outreach or post a frequently asked questions document, or find the best resource. And maybe, Susan, that's the next question that I would have for you. You know, I've seen questions around how do you calculate cost of goods sold, or can labor be included within cost of goods sold? I know one of the businesses in the region, I mean, so these are getting really technical. What is
Mm-hmm.
your recommendation for businesses in terms of trying to wade through those kinds of
Wade
questions
through
and
that.
considerations?
Well, for that particular question, I guess my first route would be to have them look at their own tax returns
Yeah.
to see. Very often their business tax returns are going to itemize it right there. I will say that yes, there are a lot of miscellaneous and very small detail type of questions. Some of the information will come down to bringing the information in because you're going to be trying to lay out what kind of payroll costs you have, what are included in those numbers, the number of people you have, and things like that. And to some extent, the lender also will be looking at that. So they'll have a lot of feel for what they need to see and not see. So some of it can be done right that way. For people who really have a hard time with really kind of getting, because maybe the kind of business they are or the particular type of employee structures that they have, we are, the SBDCs are one of our resource partners, and we are very carefully and trying to get information to them as quickly as possible, because they can also help a lender or a business person either do the application, but typically help them understand it and help them figure out maybe what kind of a program would be best for them.
So Susan, a couple of the, do you mind if I just share with you some of the common questions that sort of came in before this session?
Sure.
About the, okay,
Sure.
that'd be great. So are contracted employees part of the employer payroll calculation?
Well, they say if it's an independent contractor, no.
Okay, that was my reading of that as well.
Because they can apply themselves.
Correct.
They
Okay.
can apply themselves. Okay.
So yeah, so let's I want to, that bears repeating, I think. So if you're an employer that utilizes contracted employees, so 1099 employees, those employees would not be part of your payroll calculation to help determine what size of loan you'd be requesting, because the independent contractor, who is in essence a business entity, can themselves apply to the PPP.
Many cases, contractors sometimes have multiple sources of income too. So
Yeah. Okay.
multiple contracting.
Okay. There's one question around timeline. So, where is it? I'm sorry. So the eligibility criteria for the timeline that's calculated, it's February 15th, 2020 to June 30th, 2020. Is that correct? Or when's that 8-week block?
Basically, they consider the kind of the disaster, the beginning point is that February 15th. So they're going to be looking at your employee counts and things like that on that date. And they want to see that you're able to hopefully get all your employees back by June 30th. Now, what they're going to cover is that if you close the loan 2 days from now, that it will be utilizing your costs, what you have paid out over the next 60 days. So that is what is going to be having to be looked at when a person goes in to try and have the forgiveness. They said, this what was my payroll was. My payroll by the end of June, I was able to get back to fully employed. Everybody's back on staff. Closely to, they do look for the payroll level at being within 25% of what it had been in terms of per person, I believe. I don't believe that's done in a bulk. I believe that's done individually. That's unclear to me. But so you're going to have that 60-day window of costs that you're going to be able to go back to the lender to say, okay, I want to bringing all my information in, and I think I can tell you and have documented these are my costs. And then they would be looking at that forgiveness period, and they'll be taking a look at those calculations.
Okay. I just want to know, I want to point people to the chat. Adam posted a really good link to an FAQ document. He posted it at 2:59 if you have to scroll up. So it's PPP FAQ, and it's a Dropbox link. There's been some questions about, one person posted, why someone who is a contracted employee, why would they do this versus going through, just going on to unemployment? Let's hold that for a moment. But Susan, and maybe Erica, there's interplay between the EIDL program as well as PPP. Can either one of you sort of talk about how both could be utilized? And then I think that also then touches on the forgiveness part of the PPP. I don't know who's more comfortable diving into that.
Why don't I hit that first, if that's okay, Erica?
Sure.
Okay, she's probably like, go for it.
Okay.
The EIDL can be used for many different purposes, but the key with the two programs is the PPP is really primarily driven off of your payroll. And if you have a PPP to cover your payroll and you're using the EIDL for all of your other overhead and expenses and these miscellaneous other things that come along, or for that matter, I am under the understanding that you could use the EIDL loan also for payroll not during that 8-week window. So later on in the year, it might be able to apply. But basically, they don't want a business getting two benefits for the same thing. So if a EIDL is applied for and you get it, but you're going to be, now you've applied for the PPP because you think that'll be better, it will want to know the details about the EIDL loan that you have, and you can use it to refinance into that, especially that advance portion. The interim guidance that came out have a lot of examples. The challenge in some of those examples are they always use the EIDL loan as being $10,000, which is confusing because it makes you think, are you talking about the grant or the EIDL? And the EIDL loan can be up to $2 million, but you still get an advance piece of that. And that's why that's a little confusing. That would have to roll over into the PPP if that's, or it would be taken into consideration. So even if you had the two, there may be a very slight reduction based on any kind of an advance you might have gotten on the EIDL. Again, if you can keep the purposes of the two loans separate, you can have both. They don't necessarily have to affect each other.
Thank you. Erica, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Except for that EIDL is going to be quicker. It's another difference. But Susan, I actually have a question. So if you have an EIDL and you use it for certain things, and you can get if you get a PPP and you're using that for payroll, or at least a majority of that for payroll, and it's compatible that way, do they subtract out? I did read something about that they would kind of deduct back that 10,000 or whatever you're getting, that they would compensate somehow for that advance.
My understanding, Erica, on that is if you are going to be using it for payroll, they're going to on the PPP, because you already got that advance, it's going to reduce slightly the PPP amount by that same amount because you got it on one versus the other. Again, the key to the understanding, or trying to understand it, is that not getting the same, more than one set of benefits for that. The ability to make those distinctions, there's a little bit of lack of clarity, but they make it pretty clear that if they're for two different purposes, you can use both.
Okay, great.
Okay.
One of the other questions that we received, this is a little lengthy, but I think it's important, and I'm just going to read it. Can we use any of the funds to supplement the income of employees who are still working as we are running a skeleton or small crew? Yeah, so that's the question. Can it be used to supplement?
If it's their payroll, if it's and there can be other forms of compensation in there. I would expect the answer would be yes, but remember, you still got to get your head count back up. So there are going to be other issues that come into play, and bringing all of the people back by that June 30th deadline is going to be important. So just relying on existing employees who are just doing more work, you have to get the other people back in as well.
Okay. I see a question in the chat. What if you have not laid off your employee but are allowing them to operate the store while you operate a digital interface from the house? So
I don't understand.
yeah, I'm trying to get my arms around that.
It doesn't, the business has to be in operation, but it doesn't have to be, especially a lot of businesses are online anyway. It doesn't have to be necessarily at the physical plant. If you have a physical plant that you're running, but you move some of your office capacity off site, I don't see that being an issue at all, if that's what the question is.
Okay, great. I'm trying to catch up.
RT, Jen and I have been copying and pasting all the questions into the Google Doc where the agenda is. So that might be an easier place for you to read them.
Oh, thank you. And again, I'm going to reiterate that it's already 3:09. I don't.
And what I will put forward here, RT2, is if you wanted to send me those, I can try and go through and give the best answers that I can or refer, and I can get that back to you.
Susan, I really appreciate your offering that up because I think it's going to be important given that there's a timeliness to the PPP, right? I mean, there's a discrete amount that's available.
You can only apply up until the end of June.
Okay.
And it is also imperative that you realize the difference between the EIDL and the PPP, because the PPP also is, there's been some different ways it was described before. What is in there now is if you do not get all of it forgiven, it rolls into a term. The full term of that is 2 years. At one point it was being talked about as if it would be 10 years, and it is not. It is 2 years. And the interest rate on it is not 0.5%, it's now 1%. And if you read the interim guidance in there, there's some rationale that they go through about this, that, and the other thing, because they had to try and make a functioning program that was going to work and hopefully hold out for a period of time. I do know that a lot of people have indicated a fear that it'll go fast. They may be right. The EIDL can be applied for all the way to the end of December.
Okay, there's a
The
question
EIDL,
that yeah, go ahead.
but the EIDL also, we're going to be giving you 12 months of deferments for the EIDL. So you don't even have to make a payment after you get an EIDL loan for the first 11 months.
Okay.
The PPP loan will have a 6-month deferral at the beginning of it.
Yeah. Okay. If a business doesn't meet the 6/30 deadline, the June 30th deadline, does that mean that there is no loan forgiveness available to them?
They ratchet it down, is the way it's described. They won't give you all of it. I don't know exactly how they calculate that, but my guess is if the difference, depending upon how much you didn't meet, it will impact the percentage of that. The other thing is too, is they are limiting any expenses that they're looking at for forgiveness purposes that are not payroll. It will never be more than 25% of the forgiveness.
Okay.
They are trying to, again, get more money out to more businesses that need it.
Okay, here's an interesting question that's popped up here. Our hospitality business is closed by the Vermont governor's order. Opening date is unknown. If it's not until early June, will the 8 weeks start? Will it start then?
It's a very good question. My guess is, and it's a guess, that they're going to have to tweak the existing regulation a little bit, because I do think that that's an issue. There's a lot of business who simply cannot open. However, there's also indications that they want people on payroll. They don't want to wait until 2 months away to get them back on payroll. They want them on payroll now. So I do understand the dilemma.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid I think they are looking at needing to get those employees back. It is a
Okay.
very hard conversation and challenge to figure that out.
Okay, so we'll
businesses.
keep our eye out for that potential change, hopefully. Okay, I want to just note that Mike, I believe Mike Harrington is on the call. Before we go to Mike, HB from Out in the Open is trying to we're trying to get our, and there was chat earlier in the session about who the SBA lenders are in the region. The BDCC will endeavor to get that list available once it gets solidified. I think there's some information out there now, but it might be mostly for northern Vermont based lenders. So we will.
Can I interrupt one quick thing? There is a tool on our website. If a business in your market area wanted to find out who is doing the PPPs, you can go in through that tool. It's not perfect, and I will tell you that it seems to only key off of the headquarters.
Okay.
So, for example, that could be a problem. Identifying all of the people who are actually in your physical area.
Right. Okay. Adam, I think you were going to jump in. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah, so we did upload a list of the Windham, Windsor, and Bennington County lenders to our website that are eligible for this. But it's really important everyone understands that this is going to be done with a local bank or a national bank, but I would recommend using a local bank. And you're going to have that relationship with with a bank who will submit this for you. So, definitely start with your local bank and ask them what they're doing. Are they submitting applications today? Are they reviewing the guidance and maybe they're submitting those Monday? We've reached out to local banks and starting at 6 o'clock this morning and gotten a variety of answers. I don't want to speak to any banks or speak for any banks here today because it is such a dynamic situation, but reach out to your bank, ask them if they're processing this. And then RTF, off to Mike.
Yeah.
And just to follow up, be patient with the lenders because, as I said, they just got this late last night and they're still trying to absorb it. So,
great. Susan, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and working through this with us today. Michael, Deputy Commissioner of the Vermont Department of Labor, I think is here with us. Sarah, have you found him to unmute?
Yep, he's unmuted.
So just a correction, RT, he is the acting commissioner of the Department of Labor. And Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Understand you and your department are under siege here, and thank you for the work you're doing. Mike, are you unmuted?
I am unmuted now. Don't worry, I was not highly offended by the title change. I actually might prefer to go back to deputy at this point, as many of you can imagine.
Apologies.
No, absolutely fine. So obviously it's been a busy time, just like you were all talking about with the small businesses that you're dealing with. It's an uncertain time. It's a scary time for a lot of people here in the unemployment insurance world. We've received probably 55,000 initial claims in the past 3 weeks. And we've been able to process a lot of those. Typically for every 500 claims we receive, half of those have some issue attached to them that we have to manually work out on the back end. So that has slowed a little bit, but I would say in general, we're further ahead than most states. And I think a lot of that is attributable to our size. Some of these larger states and larger cities have seen such a massive influx that there just isn't even technology out there that can handle it. Our technology requires a lot of tender love and care. It's a 30-year-old mainframe system that can be finicky at times. But in cases where we would typically process 3,000 claims a week or 3,200 claims a week, we're now processing in the tens of thousands of claims a week, and that continues to grow. And then add on top of that these federal programs that just came out, which require a whole nother level of administration. So we from the department's perspective, if I can give a little bit of guidance, but if someone is generally eligible for unemployment insurance, we would calculate what that weekly benefit amount would be, and then they would receive that $600 automatically on top of that. Under the other federal program, which is pandemic unemployment assistance, independent contractors, sole proprietors, self-employed individuals are also eligible. And that's going to take us a little bit to stand up. Hopefully sometime next week we can have at least a preliminary process in place. And then it has to be fine-tuned to meet federal guidelines. But for the most part, we should be able to begin handling those claims in the next 7 to 10 days. Whether it's manual or automated. It will eventually need to be automated because we're expecting probably somewhere around 30 to 40,000 of these claims to come through, just given what we know of the landscape of Vermont. Again, so these are massive numbers. What I will say is I know people are frustrated and people are scared, and one of the most frustrating things are the people who call day after day after day and are unable to get through. We are trying to put as much information and as much of the documentation and process online for people to do online, but there are still components that require someone to call in. What I have been reassuring and promising people is that no one will be out benefits because they couldn't get through. There may be a delay in processing, or there may be a delay in issuing a check, by a matter of days. There are other states that are like 5 and 6 weeks behind, but we're looking at, I think at this point, days of delays, not weeks. But everybody, we do have the flexibility both under our program as a state, but also the federal programs to make benefits retroactive to the date of the claim or the date the federal program went into place. So people will not be out benefits or their eligibility won't be impacted just because they weren't able to get through on our phone lines or the website was down or something like that.
Michael,
yeah, go ahead.
Can you entertain a few questions?
Absolutely.
Great. We have a question in the chat about half my staff doesn't want to return to work yet. How should I respond on their unemployment claim forms? Yeah, so there are a couple different components here. So under the state's recent law 742, if someone is staying home because they are in a high-risk population and are worried about exposure, or they're staying at home to care for a child or a loved one who is impacted by COVID-19, that makes them eligible for benefits. As an employer, if you are laying people off because you've been asked to, shutter your doors for a temporary period of time, they are also eligible. We're also under the state legislation relieving employers of any new charges related to COVID-19. So if you're a taxable employer, any charges related to COVID-19 will not go against your experience rating. And if you are a reimbursable nonprofit municipality under the federal regulation, you are eligible for up to 50% relief. Due to COVID-19. So if someone says my employees are not wanting to come back, that really depends on the circumstance. So if it's someone's not coming back again to care for a child or to
take care of a loved one, or because they've been quarantined, or because of a health condition have been instructed to stay home, they continue to be eligible for benefits. If you are deemed an essential business and able to operate within the state and do so while adhering to the state's and CDC's guidance for safe workplaces, and you open that door for employees to come back, then essentially those employees, unless they can identify a concrete reason why they cannot go back to work, would be ineligible to receive benefits going forward. So they really have to be able to document the reason for why they are not going back to work. And I think that's probably less of a concern now. It's probably going to be more of a concern, weeks or months from now, where the benefits are extremely generous in some cases. And I could see where employees are reluctant to go back to work if their employer opens 30 or 60 days from now. And in those cases, if they have a legitimate offer for work and it's done so in accordance with state, federal guidelines, they need to take that offer, and if they refuse that offer, they're essentially making themselves ineligible for benefits, depending on the circumstance.
Okay.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Adam.
Hi, I just wanted to let you know that we've posted in the chat a link to the town hall recording that you had yesterday, so that people can view that.
Yeah, great. So everybody on the call is aware, we'll be doing employer town halls a couple times a week. Typically, I think it's going to be Tuesday and Thursday. We're also going to be doing claimant town halls, and those will happen probably on a similar schedule or every other day, depending, and those will start next week as well. Again, I think we're hoping that we can allay some fears or concerns, or just get questions answered simply by being available, even if it's not a direct phone call, but just sharing as much information as possible is going to be key at this point.
Great. All right. Thank you. Maybe just two quick questions, and then we should probably conclude, since we're already 25 past the hour. A small business owner who also has some part-time W-2 wages, would they be eligible for unemployment?
Are we talking about the employer as the business, or the employer as an individual?
The employer as the business, who also, I guess, then has part-time W-2 wages under another employer.
So again, unemployment insurance is specific to the individual, not to the employer as a business. But if the employer is a person and they have income from multiple sources, again, it's really about the reduction in income. So if they have multiple jobs, for instance, if, let's say we're talking about an independent contractor or a self-employed individual that is self-employed and has other wages because they have another part-time job, it will be based, there will be a monetary determination, both based on what they claimed on their taxes as that sole proprietor, but also based on what their income is, and what the loss of that income is. And so it's not a straight yes or no, and I couldn't even tell you what the mathematical equation is for that. But those are the factors that would play into that, is really identifying a loss of wages, and that loss of wages would determine whether someone is eligible, and if they are eligible, what their benefit amount would be on a weekly basis. If you're eligible for benefits, your range is going to be somewhere between $190 a week to $513 a week, and then whatever that ends up being, there's that additional $600 on top of it.
Okay. And in the chat, thank you very much, Michael. In the chat, Erica has just posted that we have confirmed that part-time workers on unemployment will get the full $600 per week. Again, we've had a lot of questions coming in, and I want to assure you that we are capturing these, and we will endeavor to get answers.
Can I just, I want to clarify something, and I'm happy to go back and look this up, but I want to go back to that. We have confirmed part-time workers on UI will get the full 600. The $600 doesn't change, but you do have to qualify for UI first before you can get the $600. There are some temporary or part-time employees that will not be monetarily eligible for unemployment insurance. So the way you become monetarily eligible is you have to earn a certain amount of wages in the past 5 quarters. And so if someone was only working a few hours a week, or they were unemployed for a period of time and only recently became reemployed, they may not have enough wages in their base period to qualify them for unemployment insurance. So again, they will get the full 600. That doesn't change, but they have to qualify for unemployment insurance first.
Okay. Okay. How long will this 600 per week go on for?
It lasts, I believe, 4 months. So under normal UI, we have a max of 26 weeks. The feds have also authorized extended benefits for an additional 13 weeks. So that's where you get the 39 weeks that some people have reported. But that would be either for state benefits or for federal benefits for self-insured, self-employed individuals. That additional 600, I believe, is 4 months from the time the person starts filing.
Okay.
There's a couple questions out there about why haven't I seen the $600 already? I think it's important for people to recognize there are 2 steps in this process. So the first step is I become separated from my employer, I open my claim or open my instance, right? And then at the end of each week, from that claim, I file for the prior week. So if I was laid off on Monday of the week we're in, I can't file for this week until Sunday night. And I have all of next week to file for this week. So I'm always filing for 1 week behind. And then that $600, just so people are aware, is only applicable, it only started being applicable for this week. So no one will have seen that $600 yet. Only when people file next week for this week, in that check will they see the $600.
Yep. Oof. So a lot of information today. I want to, we're 15 minutes past what scheduled time is. I really want to be sensitive to our participants' time. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Erica, thank you so much for joining us. Tristan, and everyone else.
I would say in your chat, if you end up picking out what you think are kind of the top 10 questions, if you want to shoot them over to me, I'm happy to get answers to those so you can send them back out to the people on the chat.
Awesome. We are grateful for that, and we'll probably take you up on that. And I want to mention we will endeavor to answer the questions that have been posted. We've been recording them, but thank you very much for attending. Please join us again next week, because I'm sure next week we will be focused on the how even more so. So thank you so much, and have a great week, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
RT, Jen, Laura, Adam, can you stay on? Oh,
I don't know. Did Adam leave?
that's fine.
Hey, Meg.
Hi, Meg.
It was really good. Thank you.
Ooh.
Meg.
Yeah, appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sarah, I grabbed those last couple
Okay.
in there. Yeah.
I'm gonna put people in the waiting room.
Yeah.
Okay, Adam's back.
Okay. Wait, one,
Is it
two,
just
three,
us?
4, 5, 6. Casey, are you there? Are you joining us?
Hold on,
God.
My Siri just answered you.
Oh, good. Thanks, Terry.
Good.
I'm just hanging out. I can leave. My bad.
No, you don't have to leave. I just
Woof.
can
Good
I?
job, Martini. That was
Good
great.
job.
That was great. Really, that was a lot of chat information. I think Sarah grabbed most of it. I grabbed a couple things at the end. We can clean it up and give it to
Oh,
Susan.
hold on. Wait.